Well, hi to my YouTube subscribers. Well, a few days ago I posted a video, Should I Worry About the New Thai Tax Regulations? That video got more views and more comments in 3 days than any other video that I've posted. Clearly, people are interested in the topic. This is part 2 of that video. Now, in that video, I do 2 things. First, I go over the new 2024 tax regulations that apply to expats who are tax residents in Thailand. That is, foreigners staying 180 or more days in a calendar year. Second, I suggest that although these regulations are law, it's highly unlikely that the tax authority will require many expats to pay taxes. The new regulations are really aimed at a very small number of wealthy people with large offshore investments who have abused the tax system by not paying taxes anywhere. There may be a few expats in this category, but other changes to the tax code are aimed at preventing wealthy Thais from doing this. So I'm going to offer a personal opinion. Wealthy people who live in a country and dodge paying taxes on offshore investments should pay taxes. There's no reason why poorer people should carry the burden for the wealthy. My belief is that the changes in the Thai tax law for foreigners is actually aimed at collecting money from a very small number of foreigners who live in Thailand but avoid paying taxes anywhere on big offshore investments. I believe these regulations are not aimed at your average expat retiree. I don't believe that the Thai tax authority is going to try to tax your pension or any other reasonable amounts of money that you bring into Thailand. First, it would cost them more to administer the collection of these taxes than they would collect. Second, many foreigners would choose to spend their money elsewhere. These new regulations are aimed at getting a small number of wealthy tax dodgers to pay their fair share. Now that's an opinion. However, these regulations are on the books, so it's useful to understand what these regulations are. As I say, it's highly unlikely that these regulations will be applied to your average expat, but it's very sensible to understand what your tax liability might be if they were enforced. So my suggestion is to be prepared by knowing what the rules say, but then don't worry about it until there's some indication that the rules are being enforced. And just to be crystal clear, I do not believe these rules will be enforced in the case of your average expat. So let's look at some of the comments that I got. One comment I got was, "There is no new tax law, only speculation on possibility." And quite a number of people liked this comment. The problem with this comment is that it isn't true. It's what we now call in the U.S. an alternative fact. New regulations were introduced this year. There may be speculation as to whether these rules will be enforced, but it's simply a fact that new regulations were published this year. So I find this comment puzzling. And for people who don't believe this, I'm putting some links to relevant tax documents in the description of this video, and you can research them yourself. Now, another commenter said that he was told by a visa agent that all expats would need to file tax returns next year or they would not be granted their annual visa extension. Now, the commenter suggested that this was scaremongering, and I agree. There is nothing in the tax regulations suggesting that expats with no tax liability will need to file tax forms. So why would a visa agent suggest this? It does seem possible that visa agents want to scare you into letting them handle your extension. They can work the magic to get you the extension. But if you do it yourself, you'll have to file tax forms. Or maybe the visa agent would offer to file your tax forms for a fee. Visa agents, tax attorneys, and tax consultancies do have a financial incentive to get you to believe that you need to file taxes, or at least consult with them. I've seen these scare tactics in some YouTube videos I've seen. Everyone should take a breath. There are new regulations on the books, but many, and probably most, expats would have no tax liability under these regulations. And in the relatively small number of cases where expats would have some tax liability, it's unlikely that the Thai tax authority will try to tax these people. Have I said this enough times? And another comment. I think it's pretty lousy to be taxing people in Thailand when they earned their money in another country, whether or not there is a double tax agreement. Well, I suspect that some number of people will agree with this. I don't, but I respect the opinion. Wherever you are earning money, the services you are getting come mostly from the country where you are living. It's perfectly reasonable to expect that if you live in Thailand, you would be expected to pay your share for the services you get. But just to be clear, you probably won't be paying this. I'm just making the argument that it's not unreasonable. So if people should be paying taxes in the country where they're living, why do these double tax treaties exist? If I'm living in Thailand, I should just pay the tax on my pension to Thailand instead of the US. I think the theory is that it's easier administratively to tax income in the country where it's earned. So the tax treaty recognizes that there are Thais living in the US earning income in Thailand, and Americans living in Thailand earning income in the US. So the two governments agree that it's a wash, and they agree that income will mostly be taxed in the home country because it's more convenient to do that. In general, it does seem perfectly reasonable to me that, in concept, you should pay taxes for services you receive in a country where you are living. And I'm sure some of you will disagree with that. That's a personal opinion. Now, the same commenter goes on to say, and I do not recommend Thailand as a retirement destination. There are better options. Well, there are certainly many retirement options. And I think the choice is very personal. Many Americans choose Costa Rica because it's close to the U.S., so retirees can use Medicare. The Philippines is good because they seem to make retirement visas easy, and a lot of English is spoken there. But for me, Thailand is my personal paradise. For me, it's head and shoulders above the many other places I've visited. So, for me personally, there is not a better option. Now, some commenters got into the nitty-gritty of whether a pension of a particular size in a particular home country would be taxed. Now, these are people after my own heart. I was an engineer. I want to see the numbers. Kudos to those commenters who did the hard work of coming up with these numbers. Now, I suggest that people should not worry about the possibility that these tax regulations will be enforced for the average expat. I don't think they will. But I think it's sensible to look at what your tax liability would be if they were enforced. Comments that look at the numbers really help. Other commenters noted that the double tax agreements do vary from country to country. So it's good to look at the double tax agreement for your home country. One commenter noted that Thailand can tax his Australian pension because it comes from the private sector. Australian government and military pensions can't be taxed by Thailand. So, the devil is in the details. Look at your DTA. One commenter said that he was told by an attorney that he would have to file a Thai tax return even though he had no tax liability. Now, I looked at all the documents he cited, but could find no such requirement. However, while looking at this, I found something very interesting, and I'll just read my whole reply to his comment. Fred, great comment. Let's start with the tax treaty. I looked at Articles 1 and 24 describes the DTA. I see nothing here suggesting that a U.S. citizen would be required to file tax forms in Thailand if they have no tax liability. Of course, Thailand would be perfectly free to impose such a requirement.